This week in Billionaires, the path to becoming the world's first trillionaire just got significantly shorter for Elon Musk. Musk is now the world's first person worth over $600 billion, with an estimated net worth of more than $680 billion as of Wednesday. This historic surge is largely due to his rocket company, SpaceX, which recently doubled its valuation to $800 billion. Musk's $336 billion stake in SpaceX is now his most valuable asset, exceeding his Tesla holdings. SpaceX is reportedly targeting a $1.5 trillion IPO in 2026. And his XAI holdings is also booming, reportedly seeking funding at a $230 billion valuation. These milestones suggest the era of the trillionaire may arrive sooner than expected. Director James Cameron has officially joined the ranks of Hollywood's billionaires, with Forbes estimating his personal net worth at $1.1 billion. Over his 40-year career, Cameron's films, including Titanic and the Avatar movies, have collectively grossed nearly $9 billion globally. Despite his long track record of risking his personal paychecks to maintain creative control, his films consistently deliver massive commercial success. Cameron is poised to grow even richer, as he's expected to make at least $200 million pre-tax on the upcoming Avatar Fire and Ash, which is anticipated to gross over $2 billion. Mackenzie Scott donated a total $7.2 billion in 2025, bringing her lifetime total giving to $26 billion, and making her the third most generous donor in the US. She achieved this colossal total faster than Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, delivering massive, no-strings-attached gifts this year to roughly 200 groups. Her focus included higher education, especially HBCUs, and climate initiatives. Despite a $30 billion net worth, Scott has disposed of over 75% of her Amazon shares and given away over 46% of her wealth, a percentage second only to George Soros. In contrast, her ex-husband, Jeff Bezos, has donated less than a fifth of what she has since their divorce. Welcome to Beyond the Billions. I'm Giacomo Tognini, and joining me today is Forbes reporter Phoebe Liu. Phoebe, thanks so much for joining us again. We're here today to talk about the new nuclear age and particularly how that relates to the AI data center boom. You recently wrote this fantastic magazine story about the subject with our very esteemed colleague, Chris Hellman. So what can you tell us about this new nuclear age and the companies that are cashing in on it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, Chris has been covering energy and nuclear for the last 20 or so years, and I kind of came into this through the AI data center financing side of it. So it was super fascinating seeing those two kind of come together because I think that is what has caused such a boom in nuclear innovation because the AI companies want more power faster than people have ever tried to build nuclear before. Because of that, I think public opinion in some way is shifting to support nuclear. And I think one of the analysts we spoke to made a good point that in a lot of cases, this being one of them, policy kind of follows how public opinion shifts. Nuclear has historically been very bipartisan and is kind of still the case, even though Trump is really trumpeting.
Right.
A lot of these nuclear startups specifically, but I think that's causing a lot of sometimes really young entrepreneurs believe that they can create nuclear companies to power the AI data center boom because there's just kind of not enough power to fulfill the demand that a lot of these big tech companies are claiming that we'll need. I think historically and right now, most of it's being powered by natural gas. Those
big
turbines,
backlogs
yeah, big backlogs. I think 4 to 7 years, depending on who you ask. Trump is on his like anti-wind, anti-solar situation, and then there's nuclear, which I think after all of the like meltdowns and disasters, it was really heavily regulated. So people hadn't really been trying to create new types of nuclear plants because of that. But I think this moment is making that possible again, which is what Chris and I were trying to get at in the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because it's like an industry that I think people view as pretty old, right? We think about these big reactors, and I think when a lot of people think about nuclear energy, they tend to think about the disasters, right? Like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. How do you think that public perception has changed, and how has that changed, I guess, investors' perceptions about the space? Because a fascinating part of your story is sort of how much money is going into this.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, I think, up to almost $5 billion this year across private, public, and retail investors, actually, as well. That's up from, I think, close to 500 million just 5 years ago. So, yeah,
Wow.
a huge outpouring of money into this. I think the safety aspect of nuclear and what the disasters have kind of, like the imprint those events have left on the world is not to be overlooked.
Right.
It's important to make sure that everything is safe, and that's kind of where the balance between like the amount that we should be regulating these things and also not trying to hinder the pace of innovation, because in the AI race, you have to move fast. So I think that's a delicate balance. I think proponents of these advanced reactors, which tend to be much smaller in many cases than kind of the big plants that had incidents also a long time ago. So I think the temporal aspect of it helps us feel like we're farther away from it, and that we can maybe start innovating again. But yeah, the people who are building these smaller ones are saying that because they are smaller scale and because a lot of kind of the safety mechanisms are automated so that people don't have to be like really like right in there, it is safer. There are critics who disagree, but I think we'll see, I guess. Yeah,
Like with a lot of
it's
things in
too
this
early
space.
to tell
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen.
So when we look at all of this energy that these data centers need, right, there's this huge gap, and sort of figuring out how they're going to get this energy between now and 2030, and those backlogs that we talked about. In looking at your reporting that you and Chris did, on the energy side and AI, how confident were you, and are you, I guess, that nuclear can actually bridge that gap for these data centers?
Yeah, so I guess the short answer of it is we'll see, but if there is a time for it to happen in this time frame, it is now, just because of all the forces kind of coming together to allow these entrepreneurs to create what they're trying to create as quickly as possible, both with funding and with deregulation and with customers kind of. I think Google signed like a pre-agreement to buy power from one of these nuclear companies, Kairos. The power is not being generated yet, but Google has already signed like, hey, we're going to buy like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of power when and if you are able to create it. And I think that goes to show where the optimism is. I think right now there are a couple companies who have kind of gotten to the point where their reactors can sustain fission, but are not yet generating electricity. And I think the deadline that the Trump administration set for, they want, I think, at least 3 companies to reach criticality, which is basically that when the reactors can sustain fission.
Okay.
Yeah, Trump didn't specify whether that also means electricity or not, which, makes it a little bit unclear as to what, I guess, benefits these companies are going to get for being first and like when they will be recognized for getting there. But I think there are definitely steps being made.
When is the deadline that he said?
Next July, so America's 250th birthday classic. Yeah, so I think there will definitely be additional companies that achieve that cold criticality by then, but in terms of actually generating electricity, I think there are some companies, I think Valor has very loudly said that they'll get there by next July, and several others as well, but there are also companies that are saying like it doesn't have to happen by then. If it happens in the next 5 or 10 years, like that's still a good thing, both for AI and for kind of power around the world in general.
And who are these sort of, you guys profiled a bunch of companies in there, from X Energy, which is backed by Amazon, to some more, newer startups. Who are the ones that are sort of leading the pack right now, whether it's in getting to this date that President Trump set, or whether it's sort of in terms of their, funding they've raised or other metrics?
Yeah, so actually the DOE, I think, endorsed or supported, I think, 9 or 10 of these startups to kind of help make the permitting process easier for them and give them support. Some grants, not actually that many grants, just a lot of promises for less red tape, essentially. So some of those companies include Oklo, deep fission. I think X Energy is not on there just because they've had a lot of funding from the DOE separately from that, and also from Amazon, and its founder is also a billionaire.
Oklo also
Yes.
publicly traded and is...
Oklo went public, I want to say last year, and hasn't made any revenue yet, but has a lot of connections to kind of Sam Altman and the Trump administration, and I think represents a lot of the public opinion around new nuclear right now, and thus is trading at a $16 billion market cap, which is crazy for a company with no revenue.
And that has led to two of the founders becoming billionaires.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So Jacob and Caroline DeWitt, and they're also married, which is fun. I think they met as grad students and started this company actually 12 years ago. So they've been kind of exploring what can be built yet. I don't think they have a pilot plant yet, which some people have criticized, but because of the connections and the funding and actually the fuel pipelines they have access to, they're well positioned to kind of make a move if and when that becomes possible.
And so you're saying Valor has been pretty vocal about the fact that they're going to meet that deadline, right? Who are the other companies that you think are...
Yeah, Valor actually claims they already did. They're
okay.
saying that cold criticality counts, if I remember correctly. But
which means
yes,
they've achieved the fission, but not,
but not at
production.
full power and full heat and all of that. So
Okay.
it's not creating electricity, not commercially operational yet,
Okay.
but like they have some type of a prototype that is doing things, which is super cool. I think when we were going through this process, we asked a lot of investors and analysts who might come out on top. I think it's really anyone's game. Obviously, the people with more resources and with contracts with the big tech players that are going to buy their energy. So Kairos with their contract with Google, X Energy with Amazon, they're well positioned.
And these are contracts to produce energy for data centers or in general? For
I don't know if both of them have specifically said for data centers, but like essentially yes.
One would, yeah.
Yeah, I forget what's actually in the press release. But in addition to that, I think some of the investors we were talking to were saying Radiant, which makes like really, really tiny reactors, so like 10 megawatts versus some of these other players we've been talking about are more in the 350 to 450 range, and Terry's.
And I guess just to make it clear for people,
Yeah.
we're not talking about data centers needing gigawatts of energy, right? So when we're talking about 350 megawatts, is that enough for like a data center, or is that?
Yeah, so they're being sold in like packs of lots of them. So the idea for
altogether
these
that-
smaller
okay.
ones is that you can kind of manufacture them in a facility and then kind of just like ship them to where they need to be, which is, I think, could be interesting for how fast data centers want to kind of get up and running.
And obviously all on a much smaller scale compared to the massive nuclear plants that we're familiar with in the public imagination.
For sure. But on that, I mean, who's to say? I think there has been a little bit less talk about the big plants, I guess, in the last several months. But recently, I mean, Trump changes his mind a lot. Recently, Trump announced kind of a partnership with Westinghouse, which makes the huge reactors. And there is a fascinating company that you wrote about called Fermi that is poised to maybe benefit from that.
That I briefly wrote about with our other fantastic colleague, Kyle Kahn-Mullins, but that you and Chris also wrote about in the stories, if you want to unpack them a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess you probably know more about this than I do, but Fermi was a company that was founded just this year, went public, valuation instantly went up, kind of past 10 billion. They haven't really built anything, but all of their branding is like extremely tailored to capitalize on kind of the hype cycle that exists. Like, we're going to build nuclear reactors, data centers, AI.
Yeah.
We love Trump, make America great, data center.
They named it the President Trump Data Campus or something.
Yeah, so if they are able to build something, it would be super cool. Obviously, they're so new that they haven't yet, but they're definitely kind of capitalizing on the moment and has minted at least 2 billionaires.
Yes, and they have plans to, basically their plan is to buy huge Westinghouse reactors, right?
Right,
on
yeah.
their big campus in the Texas Panhandle. That's a good segue to what I want to ask you next, was that, for me, co-founded by former Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who was in the first Trump administration, and they're aligned very much with the Trump administration. And Trump has really been pushing this sort of resurgence in nuclear energy. Again, like you said before, has taken the complete opposite tack with renewables like wind and solar. How much of a change do you think this really is, and how much is how much are these government initiatives, I guess, pushing the field? Because obviously a lot of these companies existed, not Fermi, the other ones existed, in recent years, and are now just sort of having this huge wave of investor interest.
Yeah, like NuScale, Oklo, X Energy, all of those have existed for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
I think, like I said at the beginning of this, nuclear is pretty bipartisan, and this current moment has been shaped a lot by AI and a lot by kind of the shift in public opinion. And I think if that lasts, even if the next administration is drastically different from how Trump is, things are not going to change that much with nuclear. I think the one thing that could maybe sway things is if a future administration is much more bullish on wind and solar. That could create more competition, but I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah, more energy, the better, right?
And more green energy, the better, in my opinion, but obviously you can disagree.
Compared to these natural gas turbines. And when we look at, there's been a lot of talk lately about an AI bubble, or I guess if this could be a nuclear bubble. But with all of this energy that's needed and all these backlogs, right, and sort of this, there's all the hyperscalers and even other, private firms are continually announcing these huge data centers with ever-growing energy needs. How reliant is the AI industry on these nuclear reactor companies actually panning out? Like, what happens in the worst-case scenario, I guess?
No, that's a super interesting question. I think in the worst-case scenario, or not the worst-case scenario, like if none of these nuclear companies end up being able to build an operating advanced nuclear reactor, the data centers are just going to rely mostly on gas. That's what they're doing now. It might take a little bit longer. Who knows if nuclear will actually even be faster? We don't know yet.
Right, the timelines are so long.
Yeah, I think it's hard to know for sure. If they succeed and the AI bubble pops, it's possible that nuclear can just power the grid and power other things, power other countries. I don't think it's a bad thing if the AI thing all goes down. But yeah, I think it's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen.
And, you mentioned earlier that there's historically been a lot of red tape, right, in the nuclear industry. And, I read that in your story, and it's also, in past reporting on X Energy, there's a lot of this talk about how slow the agency that regulates nuclear power is. Is that getting any faster now with the Trump administration? And I guess what are the other kind of roadblocks that could come up for these companies in getting their getting their facilities up and running?
Yeah, so I guess a big part of the executive orders that the Trump administration put out, I guess earlier this year, is creating alternate pathways to getting approved to create things and kind of speed up permitting. So I think it's definitely true that there's less red tape now, which leaves it up to the companies to build fast. They can't really, I don't know, in an ideal situation, they can't blame it on the government as much anymore. I think 3 of the companies actually sued the NRC for being too slow, allegedly.
Wow.
That case has been stayed. I think they're working something out because I assume there are more executive orders and more initiatives and things like that to come.
To help speed up the process.
To help speed up the process. But I think the other pipeline that's super interesting is fuel. The main difference besides size, I guess, between the large reactors and the advanced reactors is that these smaller guys need specialized fuel. It's like all these like tiny poppy seed-sized kernels. Different companies have different configurations.
We were talking about it earlier today, right? Like, are they pebbles, marbles?
Yes.
How do you describe it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the fact-checking call for this story, we spent 2 hours trying to discuss like the pebble, marble, golf ball, kernel, whatever. So it's like little, whatever term you want to use, pieces of uranium dioxide that different companies put into different configurations that if a lot of them are really close together, they can start a nuclear reaction. The problem with that is that there isn't really an established pipeline for manufacturing that in the US yet. So I think the DOE has kind of supported for companies to receive some of the raw materials to make that fuel to help them establish that, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think if that ends up being a lot harder and a lot slower than we previously thought, that could slow things down significantly.
And is it that these, let's call them poppy seed-sized pieces, are they being produced already outside of the U.S. and so there isn't like a U.S. manufacturing capability, or is that it's sort of so new that no one's really manufacturing them? Right now?
So my understanding is that a lot of the pipeline from this came through Russia. And when the Russia-Ukraine war started, that made it a lot more difficult to get that. So we're kind of looking into alternate methods of creating that pipeline without involving them.
And obviously it goes into the whole national security.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I know both Trump and then also the Fermi America folks have really emphasized the competition with China, right? That this is like a national security imperative for the U.S.
Definitely. I mean, that you would know as well. Like the Fermi guys have spoken a lot about how this is about a race that we need to win against China, and China has been building advanced reactors like quite quickly, and
the traditional large scale ones, right?
Yes, and also some small ones.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think they've been investing in this, and they've had, ironically, less regulatory scrutiny for a lot of this over the past, I guess, 50 years. So some people would say they're ahead, and that's kind of something that the U.S. needs to continue to invest in if we're going to have enough power to fuel the AI boom and everything that comes with that.
And so with all this investor enthusiasm in this space, right, kind of similar to AI, right, with the Fermi America billionaires, the Oklo billionaires, and this sort of huge funding boom we've seen this year, are you at all worried, or were the investors you spoke to worried about there being any kind of a bubble in this space now, as has been talked about with AI, which, again, we don't know if it is or not, but do you or did you hear about any of those kinds of fears, and what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Altman said it best, that investors are going to get burnt. Investors that have money in this, space. No, just in the broader AI boom,
okay, yeah.
Which nuclear is, I guess, a non-insignificant part of. Investors that have stakes in these companies are not necessarily going to say that, but I think everyone knows that this is an industry with almost unlimited upside. And also they could lose all their money. And I think everyone is aware of that, but betting on the hope that it will work out.
I guess is this one where you think that everyone could potentially win? Or, like with AI, right? I feel like consumers will eventually go to whichever product they like best. But is there a world where all of these nuclear setups could work? Or do you think it's some are going to be weeded out over time?
Yeah, I think depends on who you ask. If we do actually, in fact, need the amounts of power that Sam Altman and other people are saying we do, I think there's more than enough to go around. It's kind of like the data center leasing companies in the sense that like everyone will probably end up working with everyone because they just need so much power in kind of the bull case scenario. And then on the flip side of that, it might end up being that one company just takes over, but that would require a lot of scaling in terms of like actually manufacturing the thing. It's much harder to scale than just like a software company. So I think there's room for everyone to win.
Yeah, and it'll be so fascinating to watch this, with this administration, future administrations, and it's a story we'll be following for a while. But Phoebe, this has been so great to talk to you about this, as always, and thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
You can find Phoebe and Chris's story and the other stories that we talked about in the show notes.